Welcome to Naptime Sports Talk Podcast. We are two dads talking sports during nap times. Thank you for tuning in to the latest episode. Welcome back to Naptime Sports Talk Podcast. For today's episode, we'll start off with some Minnesota Vikings related conversation. We will then dive into conversation regarding the Minnesota Wild, going over our top 5 favorite players to ever put on a Wild sweater. We will then finish the episode up by going over Michael Russo's end of the season questionnaire results that were voted on by the fans. Enjoy the show. So before jumping into our topics, I just want to introduce our special guest for today's show. This guy has been a lifelong friend of mine since we were kids, growing up in the same neighborhood. He's a big-time Minnesota sports fan, especially for the Vikings, Wild, and Twins. And recently, enjoying the Timberwolves run here in the playoffs as well. So glad that he was able to hop on when we were doing well in this playoff run because we were fun to watch. So welcome to the show, Brendan Johnson. How are you doing today? I saw you brought your ass to the podcast, so welcome.
That's right. Yeah, I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. So just ready for the weekend here myself. So
awesome. Yeah, the weekend should be great. Hopefully be able to sneak in some golf. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe a little tennis, a little something. Do something outside. We'll see.
Yeah, for sure. No doubt.
See how the weekend goes.
No doubt about it. So yeah, just before we go into our topics, maybe we can just discuss a little bit. So obviously you grew up in Minnesota. Your dad's a big Minnesota sports fan. Your mom's a big Minnesota sports fan. But just talk about, how did you become like such a big Wild fan and a Vikings fan and then also a Twins fan? How did you just fall in love with the Minnesota sports? Because there's one thing, growing up in Minnesota and watching the teams, but then also sticking with them through all the hard times. And as we know, we've had a lot of heartbreak growing up in our lifetimes.
What are you talking about?
So
nothing but sunshine and roses over here.
Yeah, yep, no doubt.
Wintersville, USA.
What's that?
Wintersville, USA.
Yeah, Wintersville, USA. That's for sure. So yeah, just why don't you talk a little bit about that?
I think it's like you mentioned, started with my parents. Even my grandparents were huge sports fans. So this is probably generational, honestly. Hockey was the first sport that I fell in love with. Played it growing up. Became a huge fan of the UMD Bulldogs. My grandma had season tickets, so I went to. Some years I went to probably every home game growing up. And then I just kind of reached out from there. And then I played a little football as I got older for a little bit. And then that's what got me into that. And then watching the Vikings, especially, I don't know exactly when I really started to pay attention, but my guess is probably around when we got Favre.
Yeah, back like 09.
Yeah, I played baseball growing up, of course, as well. And, just having the Twins. I don't really know how that all started, to be honest with you, but I think it's just because they were there and like, well, they're our team. I'm going to be a fan, of course, so.
Yeah, no doubt.
I think that's all kind of we ended up here, so.
So Brendan and I actually grew up playing hockey and baseball together on the same team. And I'll never forget Brendan. I think he told me one time that he quit baseball because he always was behind me to bat and I would always get beamed. So he's like, F that. I'm not playing baseball anymore because he'd see the pain that I would suffer.
Yeah. I think I won back-to-back Little League World Series, and then I was like, this is the best it's going to get. The ball's just getting faster, and I chickened out. I had to get out of there. That's why I never played goalie in hockey either. I just don't like fast objects coming at me.
Yeah, no doubt. I couldn't imagine playing goalie, especially when those guys get older and they have rockets coming in, flying at your head and other areas of your body too. So,
right.
Yeah, speaking of the Bulldogs quick too, I remember when, just some of my favorite memories on the deck when the Bulldogs, whoever's UMD Bulldog hockey fan up here in Duluth, Minnesota, at the old deck when the Bulldogs would score, we'd run around kind of the inner concourse, as we would call it, maybe around the seats inside with the college fans. I always loved that. And one time, Brendan and I actually ended up somehow getting lost. And I remember having to go and find some random worker there, both of us. And then we had to get taken to some alternate room, and we sat there until his grandma came and got us.
Yeah, I think they actually said our names over the PR to the whole arena.
Yeah,
well,
for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how
So,
you get stuck in a circle, but we did it.
hey, we grew up in West Sleuth, so what can you do?
That's right. I mean, cut us some slack here.
Yep, exactly. So, but yeah, and then, I just kinda have written down here, Brent and I actually we've been to the Vikings training camp a few times. One time we went with his parents, that was a lot of fun. I think that was I know that was probably maybe when we were in late high school, maybe early college time. I just remember going out in the hotel area outside, had the little grass there and playing one-on-one versus you, and your dad was the all-time QB, and we just run routes and play, offense, defense that whole time, but
Yeah.
we had some fun memories growing up, and then Brendan and I actually were at the Sunday night football game at TCF Bank versus New York Giants way back then. I believe the game was below zero. We're freezing our tails off, but man, I think we went in there and just stomped the Giants in that game, so that was really fun
Yeah, it
too.
was like 40 something to I don't even know. Yeah, like 7 or 14 or I can't even
Yep.
remember,
I
but
just remember
something was like that.
Harrison Smith had like a pick six. That was really
Yeah,
sick.
like almost everybody on the team got a touchdown that day.
Yeah, that was a fun game. And then
And then remember the guy that got mad at me? The guy like a row below wanted to fight me?
I kind of remember that briefly. Is it because you were
Yeah.
celebrating too hard or what?
I don't know. I don't know if we were just having too much fun and he got mad. And I was wearing what are those just like fancy quote unquote jackets?
Oh, a pea coat?
Yeah, I was wearing a pea coat because it was, 97 minus, degrees.
Yep.
And so I don't know if he got mad at me because I was wearing a pea coat. I don't know. He had his shirt off too, so good for him. Way tougher than I was, but yeah, I think he wanted a piece of me for some reason.
You just got a punchable face, man. Punchable face.
Yeah, if that's it.
I just
That's what I
can't.
should
I
have
can't
done.
remember. I can't remember what movie that's from, but I know it's a Will Ferrell movie, I think
Yeah, I'm
so.
sure it is.
But yeah, so those are just some kind of some of my favorite memories growing up, and yeah. So well, moving on, we're gonna just hop right into the top five favorite Vikings players. So I actually shared my top five in episode 17 here. So if you want to go back to hear my full analysis of why I loved each player, just go back and check that out, episode 17. But yeah, starting off, Brendan, number five, who's your fifth overall favorite Viking of all time?
I'm gonna go with Harrison Smith.
I love it. I love
hmm
it.
Um, I think early in his career, I was. I mean, of course, I was a fan of his, but he was never like top of mind. But he's
Mhm.
really grown for me in the sense of hopefully he's a lifetime Viking, and that's just I feel like every time I buy a Vikings jersey, that player leaves the next year. So
Yeah, right.
it's nice to have somebody that's constant and obviously really, really good. He's been not only constant with the Vikings, but consistent as a player.
hmm
So yeah, that's got to choose him.
Yeah, I mean, that's hard not to choose him. When I did my list, I did top five players like who are on our current roster, so it'll be a little different. That's totally fine. I didn't tell you that because I wanted to just hear your top five overall. But if Harrison Smith, if we're talking about right now and current, he'd probably be my top five too. A future Ring of Honor guy, drafted out of Notre Dame in the late first round. And man, he's just been, ever since he came to the league, he just has been a surefire safety, one of the best safeties, I would say, in the game right now. And he can still do it all. One of my favorite parts about him is when he moves around, he can come up from back deep and move right into the box there and blitz. And he's very effective blitzer too. So he's definitely a hell of a player. And like you said, that he's going to be, I think he's going to be a Ring of Honor guy as soon as he gets out and retires here. Hopefully, he has a few more seasons. I think he's under contract next year and maybe the year after that. But yeah, Harrison Smith is a one hell of a player, so I like that a lot. Well, moving on, who is your fourth guy on your list?
So at number 4, I've got Jared Allen,
Love it.
and of course, it's his personality. Like I don't think anybody didn't like Jared Allen. Maybe if you were a fan of a different team,
Yeah,
you didn't like him, but I mean, he just brought that energy all the time, and I remember his unreal sack
right.
celebration. That was just every time it would just fire everybody up,
Yep.
it was just great. Yeah, and just riding in on a horse, I mean, that was super cool. I remember when we were at training camp, everybody was showing up in Ferraris and Mercedes
Yep.
Benzes, and he had an old Ford
F-150.
Explorer from like 19 or yeah, maybe it was a Ford
Yeah.
F-150 from like 97 or
Yeah.
something. And he just his personality was just unbelievable. And obviously he was great on the field. And yeah, I mean, what else can we say?
Yeah, he was actually my third guy on my list, and you hit a lot of or you just hit it right on the head there. A lot of things that I shared too. There was never really ever a dull moment with Jared Allen. Whenever you do an interview or anything like that, you just knew you were gonna get something comical in there too. And just a blue collar football player, just went to work. One of the best sack leaders in Vikings history. He's also a hell of a run defender too, so he could do it all. Definitely, when we got him, he took our defense to a whole nother level as soon as he joined our football team. So, yeah, Jared Allen, awesome pick. Your third overall player, who do you got?
CJ Ham.
CJ Ham, I love it.
Right. Yep. Obviously a huge favorite here in this neck of the woods in Minnesota. Went to the same school as us. He's so easy to root for as a person, and he always finds a way to make a play, at least one play a game. It seems that's, impactful. He's great at catching the ball, and he just runs through guys. And I think he loves that, just putting his shoulder down and, getting as many little yards as he can.
Yeah, no doubt. Hometown kid here in Duluth. Had the pleasure of playing with CJ in high school and met him in middle school. Like you said, he's just a great person, hard worker, a Christian, very, he has big on his faith, and just a tremendous role model too to the kids that live in our area as well. What he does for his youth camp, that he comes back here and puts that on at PSS, or they actually have a new name now, but they're at Denfeld, the football field here in Duluth. So yeah, very, very cool pick. And like you said, yeah, he doesn't shy away from contact. He really embraces that contact for sure. So well, moving on to your second overall player, who do you got?
All right, number 2, Adam Thielen.
All right.
I think the obviously thing to say is, hometown kid, one of us, as they say. Um, it's hard to come up with a lot of plays that I remember him not catching the ball.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I always felt like, if we needed a first down, especially, just throw it to Thielen. He's going to catch it. And he was so fast, especially early on in his career. And it was just incredible. And then coming from, what is Mankato, D3 football, D2? I don't know how it all works.
Yeah,
But
D2
football, and then making it onto the team like that. Like, that's such a great story. So,
Yeah, he kind of had the same pathway as CJ there. Out of D2, they didn't get obviously they didn't get a combine visit. They were undrafted guys. They were invited to Vikings rookie mini camp for a tryout, and they took off from there. They got a roster contract. After that, they both had to spend a little time on the practice squad before they made the 53-man roster. So yeah, they put a lot of work into it, and they've gotten super far. So it just proves that just because these guys come out, they're not drafted. We have a couple good UDFAs here this offseason too. Doesn't mean that they can't make a difference and make the roster. So, I always say that it doesn't matter where you get picked. It just matters after the fact what your work ethic is and how you put it in there. Because hey, any of these guys could maybe do something like these guys. Look at Stephon Diggs, for example, a 5th-round pick. Tom Brady was a late-round pick. Look at him; he's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. So
he's all right.
yeah, he's all right. A lot of these players, you look at these 1st-round picks, 2nd-round picks, but hey, just because you're not drafted that high doesn't mean that you can't turn out here in the NFL. All that matters of what you do after the fact. So, well, moving on, who is your first overall player? And I have a guess. I'm not gonna say it, but I have a hunch who this is gonna be.
Yeah. So at number 1, I got Kyle Rudolph.
Yep.
It's, I'm not going to sit here and say he's the best tight end of all time or anything like that, but I don't know. There was just something about him, especially tight end or, end zone touchdowns. Like he was just, you see those big white gloves pop out in the air, you come
Yep.
down with the ball. Like it was just, just super great. Just he was so good. Like, I remember there was a couple years where there was like a little group of media guys and athletes that would get together and hang out and go to other sporting events. I think it was like Kyle Rudolph, Jason Zucker, Meat Sauce,
Mm-hmm.
and Nick Swardson, and it was just cool that he was just a part of the community. It seemed like just, one of the guys. I know a lot of people, wish he, especially like he'd catch the ball, and sometimes you wish for him to kind of get a couple more yards after the catch was kind of a dig that people had, and I totally get that too. But it was also cool to see that he would always catch the ball and go right into contact. He'd always
Yeah, for
put his
sure.
shoulder down and just drive forward. So yeah, he has always been a favorite of mine. So
Yeah, he was definitely a classic tight end, more not I would not say a yard after catch guy because those are guys that usually catch the ball and run, but more of a reception kind of tight end, especially in the red zone, like you said, big target to throw to on those jump balls and stuff like that. And he was a really good blocker too, so being able to help on the run game, he was just a do it all kind of tight end for sure. Great pick there. He also does a lot of things for I think kids that are kind of fighting different illnesses and stuff like that. I think is very respectable. Like you said, yeah, just very respectable guy in the community here. And I think he lives back here in Minnesota too, and he's doing some college football broadcasting, I believe now. So
oh
yeah, Kyle
sweet.
Rudolph, super cool pick, super cool player. So I don't know how anyone can't love or like Kyle Rudolph. That's for sure. So well, I'll just go over my top five real quick. So, like I said, I'm not going to go in great depth on this, and these were guys that aren't on our current roster. But my fifth player was Steve Hutchinson. My fourth player was Adrian Peterson. Third player was Jared Allen. Second player is Randy Moss, and my first player is John Randall. So I can see how you had your list kind of guys around when you started really kind of tuning into the Vikings there from that 09, 08 era to current. So yeah, I really like it. I like the difference that we have in our our two top fives.
Yeah, I think one thing I wish I could go back and do is I was obviously alive when Vikings had Randy Moss and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And going back and watching his highlights, and obviously we can talk forever about how great he was, but I wish I could like paid more attention back then. I just didn't, and
Yeah.
I'm obviously glad that I'm on now. It took me a while to as I got older, but yeah, I mean John Randall too. I mean that would have been super cool to really pay attention to that. But I mean, obviously I know of them. I know how great they are, and
Mm-hmm.
all time Vikings, of course.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, moving on to our Minnesota Wild topic. So, just before we start, there's just a couple little different wild nuggets that we'd like to just talk about. And the first one is that the Vikings, the Wild didn't retain Darby Hendrickson, assistant coach. So, what's your thought on that? I was a little surprised when I saw that too. I don't know if it's because John Hines probably has someone in mind that he wants behind the bench with him that might fit what he wants to do more schematic wise. But yeah, what's your thoughts on letting go Darby Hendrickson? He's been with us for a very long time.
Yeah, I woke up to that news today. I believe it was today, and it was shocking to be honest. I mean, I know he wasn't the head coach or the GM or anything. He was mostly just the assistant coach. But I mean, he's been here. It was 14 years. He's been working for the organization, and that's a long time. A Minnesota kid scored the first ever goal at the Xcel Energy Center on October 11th, 2000. War number 14, my number. So he's just, I think, obviously a fan favorite. I heard they were actually offering him a different role outside of hockey operations. Kind of, I think they offered him to work for like the alumni organization, and he turned
Okay.
that down. So yeah, I'm just curious. I get it. We have a new coach. And they want to put their own fingerprints on what they're doing, and that totally makes sense. It's just, it's like the one guy. It's like, oh well, he's always gonna, and there's always gonna be Darby Hendrickson. You know what I mean? Yeah,
Yeah.
14 years, especially for a coach in any league, is a long time.
Yeah.
So
No doubt. And he's just been a part of the Wild franchise for a lot of years because, like you said, I remember watching him when I was a kid, you know? So he's one of my favorite players growing up. See if he made my top five. But yeah, I love Darby Hendrickson growing up. And I remember I used to have a Darby Hendrickson bobblehead actually in
nice.
my room. I gotta find that thing because man, that was really cool. But
Yeah,
it's got to be
dust
somewhere
that
at my
off and
house.
get it on the shelf.
I know, I know. I gotta really find that, put up here in my bar in my house, so that'd be really cool. But yeah, and then I'm trying to think other Minnesota news. So I'll have you kind of share that one maybe about the women's hockey.
Yeah, so the Minnesota professional women's team won the championship. I believe it's called the Walter Cup, if I'm not mistaken.
That sounds
Yeah.
right.
Yep. And which is super, super great. I mean, the best women's players in the world are in this league. Um, and they had a great series with Boston. I didn't get to watch a super ton of it because I was so into the Wolves at the time, but
Right.
um, they have a great team. That Taylor Heisey is super good. I mean, the dangler out there, she's super fun to watch, and I'm
She's
really
from
hoping.
Minnesota too, isn't she?
Yeah, I think he played for the Golfers.
She's from Red Wing or something like that, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure where she's from, but
Okay.
in Minnesota somewhere,
Yeah.
yeah. And obviously there's a ton of other names on the team that are super great, and I'm hoping
Yeah, the
this
goalie,
really. Yeah, the goalie. Um, don't know her name off the top of my head, but
Addie Rooney or something like that. She played for the
yeah,
Bolts.
yeah,
I remember.
yep, yeah, you're right. So yeah, that's super awesome. I hope that league really takes off. I mean, they've set records this year. Like the first game for the Minnesota team at the Xcel Energy Center set a record for the most people at a women's professional hockey game. And for the celebration, they were gonna have a celebration. I don't know when it was, where it was originally supposed to be at, but they had to move it to the Xcel Energy Center because so many people wanted to come.
Yeah.
That's super great. So hopefully that league takes off, and I'm excited to watch them next year, and it's gonna be great.
Yeah, the women's teams are the only thing for professional sports in Minnesota besides the Twins before our time. And then,
Yeah,
you go way back in the day for people, the Vikings won or not, they won a championship, but it was not a Super Bowl. Okay. But the Lynx, and now in the first ever season, this Minnesota women's hockey team, won a championship. So hopefully our men's teams can pick up and jump, and try to get on
yeah,
to where they've been. Because man, we are just waiting uh for that to happen. So
yeah. I think maybe the guys' team should sit in on the girls' teams and watch how they win. Maybe
yeah,
they've got
right.
something special that they do, and they guys can learn from it.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, well, moving on to our next topic here. So we're gonna go over our top 5 Minnesota Wild players of all time. So yeah, I'll just do you want me to start off, Brendan, or do you want to start us off?
Yeah, let her rip, Terror Chip.
All all right, here we go. Here we go. So number 5, I have Jonas Brodin. So one of my favorite defensemen to ever put on a Wild sweater. He's just steady on the back end, in my opinion, one of the most underrated defensemen in the NHL. He's has so far played in 12 seasons for the Minnesota Wild. He was a 10th pick in 2011 out of Sweden, and he's played in 803 games, has 54 career goals, 186 assists with 240 points, a plus minus, which blows my mind, of 93 plus in his career. So that's very good.
Yeah,
And
that's
as I said, more known for his defense and offense, and he's one of my favorite defensemen in the league, and just very steady there in the back end for us.
yeah. I think that's a great choice. That's what I'd say about him too. Um, I feel like he's super underrated. I feel like he's even underrated to Wild fans,
I think so too. Yeah,
which
I
is
think people
nuts.
would say, if you could trade people, like if I had to pick like 2 defensemen on our team right now, they're maybe the top 4, and it was between Brodin and Spurgeon, I would probably pick Spurgeon because I think Brodin is overall better defender
Yeah,
than Spurgeon. And I think he's just more of a consistent player, but we'll see what happens here next season.
yeah. I think that's a great choice. So I go with my number 5.
Yep. So yeah, moving on. Who is your number 5 player?
So I had Cal Clutterbuck.
All right, I like it.
I remember I have the first WoW game that I remember going to, and I'm pretty sure was my first WoW game. I don't remember the year, but it was against Detroit. And I remember getting there at warm ups and walking down to the ice level, and there was this guy picking up the pucks by the net, and he had this big mustache. I was like, "Who is this guy?" His hair was slicked back. He had like a look. I was like,
Yeah.
"Who in the hell?" And then, watching him play and like leading the league in hits, he was at the time the Wild were, not offensively gifted.
Yep.
So he was kind of like the one player that had some personality and he had some ruggedness, and I feel like that really appealed to a lot of people, a lot of fans. And yeah, I think when I think of the Wild, I always think of Cal Clutterbuck. So
Yeah, one word comes to mind when I think of Cal Clutterbuck, and that's gritty. Just a
yeah,
gritty overall player. Was not afraid to go in those dirty areas. Just would lay his body into. He just would just run around out there and just lay out big checks. He wasn't the biggest guy in the world either, but man, he sure could hit. So I love that choice a lot. Moving on to my fourth overall player. So my fourth overall player is Mikko Koivu. Played 15 seasons with the Wild. He was a sixth overall pick in the 2001 NHL entry level draft, our second season. Mikko played in 1,028 games with us. He scored 205 goals with 504 assists for a total of 709 points for the Wild. He only had a total of 38 penalty minutes, which blew my mind when I was looking up that because, man, 38 penalty minutes.
yeah,
And
and
he
he
played,
wasn't like shy to go into dirty areas. I mean, he
no,
wasn't really a hitter, but he was, he wasn't always on the perimeter.
no, he was a heck of a defensive forward and playing in over 1,000 games and only leaving your NHL career with 38 penalties or 38 penalty minutes is just crazy. So, yeah, I wrote here he was one of the better two-way centers in the game, and he won the Selke Trophy in 2016, a 2017 season, which is awarded to the best defensive forward in the NHL. He is the first player in Wild history to play in 1,000 games with the club and to have his jersey retired. So the number 9 will forever be hanging in the rafters at the Wild's home rink. And I say the Wild's home rink because who knows if they'd build a new arena someday. So, but yeah, Mikko Koivu is my fourth overall player.
Yeah, solid choice. I mean, when you think of the captain of the Wild, you think of Mikko Koivu, right? He was captain. I don't know how many years he was the captain, but it was a while.
Gosh, it had to be at
Um,
least 10 seasons, you'd have to think.
yeah, something
Close
around
to
there.
at least.
Yep. And a lot of people, he wasn't the most offensive sometimes. And, a lot of people can be a little, people can say like, kind of that's kind of where, he wasn't the best. But I think if you really sit back and look at the career and what he's done for the organization and the way he played the game, everybody talks about like his face offs and his defensive play. And, you just can't, he was just rock solid at that. Like the things that he did well, he was rock solid at them. And
Yep.
that's huge.
And it's a two-way game. So like you said, yeah, he wasn't maybe the best offensively gifted guy, but I guess, he kind of had that nice balance, I would say, of he was able to score when needed, put some points on the stat sheet, but you could always count on him for his defensive play to help you win games. So I think that's a very important thing
Definitely.
for sure. Who's your fourth player?
So Jonas Brodin is my number 4.
All right.
Like we already talked about, super underrated, even with Wild fans, I believe. His footwork too. He's like a ballerina out there somehow. I mean, he's super fast. I mean, skating backwards, he's just
He's a hell of a
lightning.
skater.
Yeah. He's also surprisingly, which I wish he would use more, is his unbelievable shot, especially his wrist shot.
Yeah.
Like the few goals that he does really have, like it's a lot of them are him coming down the side, getting to like the top of the circles and ripping a wrist shot, top shelf. I mean, and it's super accurate, super hard. I think coaching staffs for the Wild have tried to get him to be more offensive since he started in the league, probably. But I mean, how can you fault him when he's so dang good on the defensive end? And I hope he's also a Wild lifer. That's one player on the team I hope we never have to get rid of. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I would think that, if Koivu had his jersey retired, maybe Brodin would have his number retired someday for the Wild potential. We'll see, if he sticks with us. Because he has to be the next guy in line if he sticks with us to make it 1,000 games on our team for the Wild. Because we have had, I can't even think who'd be maybe Spurgeon. I wonder where Spurgeon's at and how
Actually,
many games he's played.
funny enough, I have that pulled up.
Okay.
Yeah, Ed Spurgeon has 64 more games played than Brodeen, but they're both at around 800.
Yeah.
So they're
And
gonna
this
get there.
past year
Most
obviously
likely.
didn't help Spurgeon because he would have been a little closer with
Yeah,
being out pretty much the whole season.
right.
So, well, yeah, moving on to my third player. So my third player on this list, maybe it would be a surprise, but we'll see what Brendan has to think on this one. Brian Rolston. So Brian Rolston, he was one of my favorite players growing up. He played 3 seasons with the Wild from 2005 through the 2007-2008 season. And then each of those 3 seasons, he scored over 30 goals. He played in 241 games with us, scored 96 total goals, 106 assists for a total of 202 points. But the thing I loved about him the most was just that he would just unleash this bomb of a slap shot. Like he would come to the tops of the circles and just unleash this freaking rocket of a slap shot.
Even on shootout
Yeah.
attempts.
So I just love Brian Rolston for that. Like I had to put him in my top 5 because freaking hey man, that was hilarious when you do that. And you'd
Yeah.
most of the time score on them too. So
Yeah. I
you
mean, if
know,
it works, why change it?
yeah. So Brian Rolston,
Yeah,
he was a funny
it's
player.
the thing that shocked me about all of that is 3 years. Oh my,
I know, only 3 years,
like I feel in my head, it just feels like he is a Wild mainstay.
right?
Obviously not currently, of course, but 3 years only. He made
Yeah,
an impact in those 3 years.
30,
That's definitely
yeah,
for sure.
30 goals in all 3 of those seasons too. So he was a solid player for sure. So who's your third overall player on your list?
Marian Gaborik.
All right.
Or Gabrick. I don't know how I loved in the draft when we drafted him. We said Gaborik.
Yeah.
I
Gabrick,
I
Dvorak.
think it's Gabrick, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But straight line speed, like he was a racehorse.
Mhm.
Um, his ability in front of the net, his wrist shot was incredible. It's too bad that Jacques Lemaire forced him to play the trap. And I think that had part of him wanting to leave. Which is a bummer. But if he was in the league now, younger in his prime, in more of the offensive game, I think maybe not on the Islanders, but maybe on a more offensive team or whatever, he would be kind of a rock star. So,
Yeah.
um, and I remember I had to miss a game that my dad got to go to with some buddies, and I think he had like a 4 or 5 goal game, and
Yeah, I remember
like
that.
I was like, oh, I should have went to that. He was electric, when he was on, and he was great.
Yeah, for sure. That's funny because he's actually my number 2 player, so that's a perfect segue into that. Yeah, I have some notes on him, you hit a lot of it on the head already, but played 8 seasons with the Wild from 2000 to 2009. He was our first overall draft pick in the history of our organization. He played in 502 games. He scored a total of 219 goals with us. His best season, he had 42 goals, which is kind of surprising because I thought he would have had a little more in those seasons, but he was statistically or consistently getting, you
Yeah,
know, over 30. He has a total of 218 assists and 437 total points. Like you said, he's kind of had to play that trap defense, so that could maybe kind of hinder those numbers a little bit because he definitely had a lot more offense than I think those stats would show. But overall, he went on to have a really solid career in the NHL too. I think he played over 1,000 games off the top of my head.
yeah,
Um,
I would
Played
say
for the
that.
Rangers and the Kings there for a while.
Won a Stanley Cup.
Yeah, won a cup. Who did he win one with? Was that with the Kings?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. When they had those couple back to back. I think
I
with
think it
John.
was the year that they played the Rangers too, if I'm not
Oh
mistaken.
yeah, it could be for sure because they did play them in one of the cups. I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
So
yeah. Who's your number 2 player?
Kirill Kaprizov.
All right.
Um, you know, he's our first real true superstar.
Yeah.
It's such a obvious answer, I feel like, but it's true. I mean, he's so fun to watch. When he gets the puck, something's gonna happen. He's gonna make a play.
Yeah.
Um, And, we'll get into this when we get into the survey. Hopefully he sticks it out with us. But, just his playmaking ability, that little like hip thing he does when he turns with his feet out and he just
Mhm.
maneuvers so well. And obviously a fan favorite. And then coming out of the fifth round, it was a cool story learning about how I believe it was Chuck Fletcher was in Russia and was going to be flying somewhere and there was a snowstorm. And that's how he got to see Kaprizov. He was from the middle of nowhere, Russia, right?
Yep.
And so he got to see them because of that snowstorm. So it's just a cool story. Yeah, and hopefully he stays a Wild player for a long time.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. He's actually my number one player. So another perfect segue here into Kirill Kaprizov. And like you said, just what a gem. Like that's all I have to say is just a gem of a find. He was drafted in the fifth round, as you spoke on, out of Russia in 2020 or 2015. Man, it took him so long to get over here, but it was well worth the wait. Too bad he couldn't have got here sooner. But yeah, in 4 seasons so far, he's played in 278 games, has 160 goals with us, 170 assists for 300 points. So he definitely has that scoring. And yeah, he's just my favorite player in the Wild history here. How can't you like a guy like him? Superstar player. Have a few pictures down here in my basement with him on the wall. Have his jersey too. So actually love Kaprizov, and hopefully he can stay a Wild player for his whole career.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. Fingers
Yeah,
crossed.
for sure. Well, to wrap it up, who is your number one overall
My
player?
number one overall player for the Wild is Kyle Brodziak.
Okay, yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. It's Zach
Yeah, I was gonna
Parise.
say Bronziak. Oh my god, that's funny. I was like, seriously? Oh, that's good.
I love
I
that
love
you
it.
went with it. I should have kept on going.
Dude, yeah, if this was a live video, my eyes were like, are you serious, dude? Like Kyle
Yeah.
Brodziak, that's your number one?
Yeah. No.
Uh,
Zach Parise is my number one.
okay.
Um, I feel like there's, especially right now, it's with the contracts that they had with Ryan Suter and Zach Parise, obviously.
Hmm.
I think there's a little bit of negativity towards him
Yeah.
within the fan base right now, and I get it. Um, but I think as time moves on, he's going to be looked back on as someone really special for the team and for the game. Minnesota kid, obviously. Super hardworking. I mean, it was so clear how hard he
Hmm.
worked every shift. I mean, it was so obvious.
Yeah.
Um, and he did have a pretty good offensive ability. He wasn't a superstar, but he was consistent. Um, yeah. Well, he had got us to the playoffs. I mean, a lot of people, are like, oh, this contract really sucks now. But what 1 year that he was here, we didn't make it to the playoffs. So
Yeah,
it
and
counts for something.
unfortunately, during those stretch runs that we had too, we just ran into a hot Chicago Blackhawks and ended up winning the Stanley Cup too. So
Yeah.
seems like we always have that luck where our Minnesota teams we run into the team that usually ends up winning the championship, and usually we give them a hell of a series. I know some of those series versus Blackhawks are pretty disappointing where they might have lost in like game 5 or
Yeah,
game 6,
there was
stuff
the
like that.
one year that I thought we played the best against them was the year that the puck was rimmed around and it went off of a stanchion right onto a breaking Patrick Kane. And then Brizgalov was like, he was
What can you do?
waters. Yeah. And I was like, are you this
Yeah,
really how this is going to end? But
for
we can go
sure.
on
Like
and on about that.
those championship teams always seem to get those bounces to go in their favor too.
Right.
So that's the thing. That's the thing for sure. Well, just wrapping up. So just we'll go over top 5 real quick. So my fifth player was Jonas Brodin. My fourth was Mikko Koivu. Third was Brian Rolston. Number 2, Mirin Gabrick. Number 1, Kirill the Thrill Kaprizov.
My number 5 is Kyle Brodziak. Jeez. Cal Clutterbuck. Number 4 is Jonas Brodin. 3, Marian Gaborik. 2, Kirill Kaprizov. And 1, Zach Parise.
Yeah, like it. Bunch of absolute dogs. You had to get that in there.
Yes.
So,
yes, we do. Absolute dog.
absolute dogs. All right. Well, moving on to our next segment, our last segment here. This will be a fun one. So, we're going to break down Michael Russo's end of the year survey. So, Michael Russo is a beat writer for the Minnesota Wild. One of the best in the NHL, in my opinion. You can follow his stuff on The Athletic. Unfortunately, he went on The Athletic, so you got to pay for it. But yeah, it's worth the little bit of money that it costs for a subscription to read his articles. So, yeah, well, let's jump right into it. So, the first question was, what was the biggest problem with the past season's team? And there's 5 different options to pick from. Number 1 was underperforming veterans. Number 2 is goaltending. Number 3 is lack of depth. Number 4 is penalty kill. Number 5 is coaching. So, Brendan, just before I give like the answer, maybe what would you say? Like, what one would you have picked?
I did the survey. My answer was underperforming veterans.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So, what did you? That was the top choice at 39.2% of the votes. Goaltending was 27%, which kind of surprised me. I thought our goaltending was pretty solid for the most part.
Yeah.
Lack of depth. That's probably the one I would actually pick because we had that stretch of injuries where we just seemed like we just couldn't get over the hump with the guys that we had to put in our lineup. That was at 23.6%. Penalty kills at 8.9%, and coaching was at 0.9%. So underperforming veterans was definitely the top choice. So
yeah, I would also put lack of depth for me as second, and it's a close second to underperforming veterans, to be honest.
Yeah, for sure. So hopefully this next season, obviously we have one more year of the big buyout at $14 million there for Kaprizov, for Parise and Suter. And then after that, I think it dwindles down to low, like $1 or $2 million. So I'm excited to see what we can put together here in the future because we do have a lot of solid prospects in our pool as well. And, besides this first round pick from last year, I overall thought we've drafted pretty well and, second round and on as well, and some in the first round too. So, well, moving on to question number 2. So it says Brock Faber is expected to sign a contract extension as soon as July 1st. What do you expect the contract to look like? So we got 7 or 8 year deal with 8 to 8.9 million AAV. AAV, that means annual. The average salary of the contract per year. Number 2 was 7 or 8 year deal with 9 to 9.5 mil. 3 was 3 or 4 year bridge deal. And then number 4 is 7 or 8 year deal with 9.5 million plus AAV. And then 5 was a 1 year deal at, just a 1 year deal. So if I had to say, I would think that, that Faber would probably get 7 or 8 years in that 8 to 8.9 million range is what I would have to agree with too. So
yeah, and that's exactly what I put as well. It would be fun to say, yeah, give him the whole, give him 10 years, 10 million, give him everything.
yeah,
But I mean, obviously he's super great and he's been super solid, but it has only been like a year and like 3 games.
yeah, for sure.
So, you do have to take that into account. So I feel like, there's some other contracts out there that they mentioned that are kind of in around the same area, like Owen Power and Jake Sandstrom. So, I mean, you can kind of fit him in there as well. So I feel like that 8 to 8.9 range would work.
Yeah, for sure. And that was the top one here at 50.6% too. So the fans agree with that as well. Third question. Jake Middleton has 1 year left on his contract with a 2.45 million AAV. Would you extend him this offseason? Number 1, depends on the term. 2, yes. And 3, no.
I I think the depends on the term is a little of a cheap, like every contract depends on the term.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
yeah, I mean, Kaprizov's awesome, but do you want him on the team 30 years from now? No.
Yeah.
So, like, I feel like that's a cop out. I say yes, um, especially with how the team seems to be unhappy with the growth of the young defenseman down in Iowa.
Mhm.
So we need all the good defensemen that we can. And Jake Middleton was solid this year. So I have no problems with the Wild signing him again.
Yeah, for sure, and I would agree with that too. I think you would definitely extend him and get him locked up for future years because, just as soon as we traded for him, it's kind of like, who's Jake Middleton? Then when you see him play for us, you're like, oh, who is this guy? Like, this guy has something here. And he seems like a great locker room dude, super goofy, still pretty young too. I think he's probably like, what, 27, 20 years old. So he still has a
Yeah,
lot
he's somehow younger than us, but looks like he's 58 years old.
of,
When he pulls
yeah,
that. But,
he's got this huge mustache.
right.
Like he could be in his 30s, but yeah, he's in his late 20s. So he has a lot of time left here in the NHL, I think. And yeah, that's what I would do too, is extend him. But yeah, the fans of the response of the fans, as you said, was depends on the term at 44.8%. That was the top selection for this question. And fourth question, Matt Boldy has averaged 30 goals over the past 2 seasons. What do you think he will become? One, consistent 30-goal guy. That was actually the top one at 60.6%. Two, perennial 40-goal guy. That was at 27.3%. Somebody who always leaving you wanting more at 9.3%. And number four is a true superstar at 2.8%. I think that Boldy's going to be a guy who's going to be a consistent 30-goal guy. So I have to agree with that. And I think that 30-goal, he's at that range, but I would not be surprised if he can get, put a couple seasons here together where he's in those 40 ranges too, as he still extends his career. He's a pretty young kid. I think he's only like 22, 20, probably 22 years old
Yeah.
right now, I think.
Yeah, 23.
23? Okay. Yeah, so he's still young. He has a lot of years left in the NHL, so he's not even
Fingers
close to
crossed.
where,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, hopefully. Yeah, hypothetically speaking, at his
Mm-hmm.
age, he would have a lot of years left if he puts together a full career. But he's definitely a guy that I think he has all the potential to be really, really good. So
Yeah, I put consistent 30 as well. I think, the past couple seasons, he's had stretches where he's been inconsistent and not there offensively. Um, and he still got around 30 goals.
mm,
So I think in his best years, he can get to 40. But I think overall throughout his career, it'll be 30.
yeah, that's fair. That's fair. All right, moving to the fifth question. So, what was your concern level as to whether Kirill Kaprizov will sign an extension next summer when he has 1 year from free agency? One, somewhat concerned at that was a top choice at 54.5%. Two, very concerned at 28.5%. Three, not concerned at all. He's staying. That was 17%. So I would probably have to lean on the side of, if we go to free agency next summer and we don't have him extended, I think I would be somewhat concerned about that, because the sense of doubt will drop in, is like, does he want to leave us? I'm hoping he doesn't. He doesn't seem like that kind of person that just is going to go play for the big market team. You think of Minnesota, though, like state of hockey, why wouldn't you want to play here? It kind of reminds him of his home, too. He said that as well in some interviews. So I'm hoping
Right.
that we can get him extended here, because that will definitely, open up some cap here in the future years once those buyouts are done, too.
Yeah, and I think I'm honestly less concerned about Kaprizov and more concerned about Kaprizov's agent.
Okay.
His agent is known. I think he's also Panarin's agent.
Yeah.
When he got him that big ticket in New York City. So,
Yeah.
and he's, from what I've heard, is very a hard nosed agent. So, you know,
Mhm.
I think we just gotta hope that just gotta have our fingers crossed. I don't know what else
Yeah,
to say.
yeah, for
Like
sure.
hopefully I don't expect us to win the cup next year, but hopefully we have a solid year, and he feels optimistic about the future here, and we go from there.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I think a part of it too, because Panarin's maybe it's his wife now and might be married, but I think she's like a model or something like that. So he wanted to be in one of those bigger markets uh for her job as well. So maybe that was a little bit too why Panarin wanted to be in those big market teams.
Okay, so you're saying we just gotta make sure Kaprizov doesn't date a model,
He just has
and
to
then
get
you're
one of
gonna
these
roll him.
he just has to get one of these Minnesota beauties, man.
That's
He'll
true.
just be
I
fine.
mean, there's
So
a lot of them.
all right, moving on to our sixth question. Should the Minnesota Wild trade Marco Rossi if it's a Cutter Gauthier type of trade for a young player with bigger upside? One, depends on the return. That was the top response at 45.5%.
Cop up.
Two, yes, at 30.4%. Three, no, at 24.1%. And I agree. It's like, obviously, if we were able to get an absolute just huge package and huge return for Rossi, like, yeah, who's probably not going to make that trade? But if it's, just straight up, I think the Cutter Gauthier trade was, did they get Jamie Drysdale in return from Anaheim? Is that what it was?
Oh, is that the Flyers guy that moved over
Yeah.
to that? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think it was Drysdale, wasn't it?
Yeah. Because one of them didn't want to play.
Yeah,
There was like a rumor.
he didn't want to sign a contract with Philly, this
Yeah.
Gauthier, and they just traded him to
Yeah.
Anaheim for Drysdale there. So I think that was a trade, but I
Yeah.
would say if I had to say if it depends on the return, I'm going to say no because I don't think you trade Marco Rossi at this young age right now because
Yeah.
I thought he was good this season. I know a lot of people, I don't
He was the
know.
second, third in points system for
Yeah.
rookies. Like,
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to trade him to me.
yeah,
So,
I understand that, we've given some money to some players that were out there exercising, but I think, I mean, and that was such a weird trade. How many players go out in public and be like, I don't want to play here? You
yeah.
know, I don't feel, especially like young kids trying to get into the league,
Yeah.
even if they are, going to be something great. So I mean, yeah, if that crazy circumstance happens again, sure. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, look at Jule Eriksson Ek. I mean, even look at Granlund for a while.
Mhm.
I mean, their first couple years were like, why did we draft these people?
Yeah.
And look at how good they turned out. I mean, I know Granlund, it wasn't who we wanted him to be, but there was a couple years there he became a pretty good playmaker, and pretty
Oh
good
yeah,
on
for
the power play.
sure. Definitely.
But Jule Eriksson Ek, I mean, he's a rock star on our team.
Mhm.
Like he's one of those pieces again, like Jonas Berdine, that I don't ever think we should trade.
Yeah.
Um, and we had to give him some years of development. I think we should do that with Rossi. I think we should give him some time and look at how hard he worked and look at where he pushed himself this year. So
Yep, for sure, I agree, and, that Cutter Gauthier too, he hasn't played an NHL game yet at that point, so he wasn't even signed, and he was a 5th overall pick in the 2022 NHL draft, and yeah, they got Jamie Drysdale in return, for a second-round pick in 2025, but just because this guy's drafted in the top 5 doesn't mean that he's gonna be a sure thing, and we know what Rossi was this past season. And I think he could build off that. So I think no, I don't think you trade Rossi. Well, moving on to the seventh question. So now the next question is, what do you think Rossi will become? So 1, top 6 center, 2, third line center, 3, number 1 center, 4, depth forward. If I had to say, if I was voting on this, I think he's going to become a top 6, in my opinion. He has I think probably a second line center with the potential to be a number 1 is what I would have to say.
yeah, I think there's a slight chance that he'll become a legit number 1 center, but I
Mm-hmm.
think his true potential is a really great second line center.
Yeah.
I don't think he'll become Crosby or anything like that, but
No.
I think, yeah, I think if he keeps pushing himself the way that he's pushing himself, I think he can reach that point.
Yeah, for sure.
I think he has the skill. He just needs to bring it together, be a consistent NHL player, obviously. So
Yeah, I agree. And that was a top choice too. 75.2% of the people said top 6. So I would agree with that. Eighth question. If the Wild were to trade Philip Gustafson, what kind of return would you expect? 1 second or third round pick, 2 middle six forward, 3 top six forward, 4 top prospect, 5 blue line help, 1 first round pick, or 7 another goalie.
I put personally the second to third round pick. I think he did have a down year this year, but he's still solid relatively. He's definitely not going to get a first round pick. I don't know who put that.
Yeah, right.
But of course I'll take blue line help. Of course I'll take a top prospect. Of course I'll take a top six forward. But
Yeah.
in reality, I think it'll be a second or third round pick. And I'm fine with that because right now, we got those contracts that we're paying off, and we just get some draft picks and let's get some players in
Yeah.
our organization and go from there.
We've been able to draft pretty well in the second and third rounds too as of late. So kudos to Judd Brackett and Billy G on that one. I'd agree with you. I don't think we're getting a first round pick. I think that's a stretch. And, why would we trade him for another goalie? We're going to have, well, unless it was, obviously this next season, we're going to have Fleury in the net. And then if we did trade Gustafson, then we would definitely have Wallstead. So, but yeah, I would probably say a second or third round pick would make sense to me. And that was the top choice here too at 44.8%. But personally, I don't want to trade Gustafson because why wouldn't you want to have a 1-2 tandem in the future? You don't know what Fleury, this is probably going to be his last year if you had to guess. I think it's going to be 41 or something like that. So how many years really does he have left? And Gustafson, he's still a young goaltender. And why wouldn't you want to have Wallstead and Gustafson as your 1-2 moving forward, So to me, it's like, well, if we trade him, then who's going to be the guy if Fleury goes down? Who's the backup in Iowa that's going to step up and play big time if they need to be called upon? I know they have your boy there, Zane, on
Right?
the Iowa Wild still, so that'd be pretty cool. But, I think we're in a pretty nice situation right now with our goaltending, so why mess that up?
I agree. I mean, I'm going to be hypocritical and say it depends on what goalies are out there and what comes of it. But without the depends answer, I would say no, I don't
Oh,
want
the
him to trade
cop
him
out.
either. Yeah, without the cop out, I don't want him to trade either. But, on thinking about him, like, he clearly sees Wallstead as what we deem our future in the net.
Yep.
And I feel like he is relatively young still as a goalie.
Mm-hmm.
So he still, he wants to be somebody's number one. So
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
true.
think he wants to be sitting behind Wallstead eventually. So it's a
Yeah.
tough scenario.
Well, we
But
still have him for next year, so why not
right.
play out next year,
Yeah, at least next year for sure.
Yeah, why not and see what happens? So he's slotted in at 3.75 million for next season. He's 25 years old right now. So yeah, he's still pretty young. But well, moving on to the ninth question here. So now it says, regardless of no trade protection they may have, which one of these core players would you most be opening to trading? Number 1, Ryan Hartman. Number 2, Jared Spurgeon. Number 3, Matt Zuccarello. Number 4, Marcus Foligno. And number 5, Jonas Brodin. Well, we definitely know that both of us are not going to say Brodin. I'm not
No,
going to say Moose either or
no,
Zook, because
no.
I like those two. So for me, it'd have to be down to Hartman or Spurgeon. Personally, man, this is tough. If I had to pick one of those guys, I'm probably going to say Hartman.
Yeah.
Because I think Spurgeon adds more to our defense than Hartman does to our forwards, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree, especially our defensive situation currently.
So I think it makes sense to trade Hartman
Yeah, we
for
got Kuzendinov in
yep.
Kuzendinov, and then we have, what's the other guy? Lambos, not Lambos. Who was the guy that came up at the end of the year? Do you remember?
Holgren.
Yeah, Olgren.
We have Urov in the system
Yeah,
coming up here. We have that Riley Height. They'd probably play in Iowa next year.
yeah. So we
But
have centermen coming through. I mean, I don't think all those are centermen, but I know
and
who's
the thing
being
is,
offers.
Hartman, we have him under contract through 2027 season there. In Spurgeon, we have him under contract. Let's see, where are you, Spurgey? We have him through 2027 too, so he's obviously has a more higher AAV at 7.575 mil, as Hartman's at $4 million. So that is nice to have that $4 million. But yeah, I'm gonna stick to Hartman. That I would trade him before I'd trade Spurgeon.
Right.
So
Same here.
the people agreed with that too. That it was close. Hartman was
Yeah.
at 29.9% and Spurgeon at 25.9%. So
I can honestly see the Jared Spurgeon perspective as well. I mean, I don't
yeah,
think we can trade him right now because our defensive young guys aren't there yet.
yeah,
So who are we going to replace him with? But I
yeah,
do think that, I can see it. He's short and, he's obviously really good at making it not as much of a factor. But, the whole league is just massive defensemen. And I think eventually we're going to have to upgrade in that area. But it doesn't
yeah.
have to be this year, of course. So I agree.
Hopefully some of these guys that we've drafted, as you noted, that maybe aren't doing as well down in the AHL, but we drafted Lambos in the first round. Damian Hunt's another guy that comes to mind. Ryan O'Rourke is another guy that I think we're trying to rely on too. So hopefully one of those guys can also step up here and would jump up into our top six. We don't have to worry about that because I feel like we've been banking on those guys to step up for us during this time. And that one kid, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he was played in World Juniors the past. I don't know if he was on last year, but he might have been the year before. But he was, I think, like for Czechia or one of those teams in East
Yeah.
Europe there. But he was a stud over there too. And they were thinking, well, this kid, I think we got him like the 4th or 5th round, 6th round, maybe even too. But it sounds like he kind of really struggled last year too. I can't think of his name off the top of my head.
Yeah, I can't either. I know who you're talking about, but I can't remember.
Yeah, I'll have to look him up later. But moving on to the 10th question. So it says, in reality, though, which player do you most expect to be traded this offseason? 1, Gustafsson. 2, Marco Rossi. 3, Marcus Johansson. 4, John Merrill. 5, Freddie Goudreau. 6, Jake Middleton. So the number one choice was Gustafsson at number 7. It was at 72% of the people voted on that. So what do you think?
I'm gonna have to say Philip Gustafson, sorry.
Yeah.
We have Marcus Johansson. I mean, he's getting paid for as long and as great as freaking Austin Matthews. So I don't know when we're ever gonna get rid of him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could see John Merrill getting moved, but then again, like I said, do we have confidence in who would replace him? I mean, we could probably find a John Merrill type in free agency, so there's that option, I guess.
Yeah.
Hopefully Freddie will have a bounce back year next year because when he's on, he's a solid middle tier guy. Then like we just talked about Jake Middleton, we don't want him going anywhere. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think in reality, I think for sure Philip will be traded.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of hard for me. Like, if we can get a decent return for him and do like a second and, get a second or third overall or a second and third round pick, it might make sense too. But it kind of just makes me nervous if one of those guys get injured. Well, then, what's going to happen to our goaltending room? Are we going to be looking for another guy? So maybe they can find someone if they do trade. They can get another guy who has some experience back there, just in case.
Yeah.
So yeah, it would make sense though if it was Gustafsson. So I would try to stick with that too. But moving on to our 11th question. So what is your confidence level that John Hines can get the Wild over the hump? Well, technically, in my opinion, right now, I think that I don't care who you are back there or who you are on the bench. You just have like a very tough situation with that number of dead cap that you're dealing with, because you could have the best coach in the world, and if we don't have the depth on our team, $14.7 million is a lot of money in the NHL.
Yeah.
You look at a lot of these contracts, you can build that depth with guys like $2-3 million contracts. That's like 4 guys right off there
Right.
that you could bring in. So I think that I am more so cautiously optimistic because until that happens, then yeah, I think he could. But is he the guy moving forward? Like, I don't know. Like obviously he's a pretty good coach, but I'd like to hear your opinion on this one too. So
Yeah, I think we just kind of you know, let the chicken roast and see what
yeah,
happens. I mean,
for sure.
that's what you got to do with a coach. I don't know. I mean,
Yep.
yeah, obviously the team got out of a slump, but then they went back into a slump.
Yeah,
So
I
like,
thought Everson was kind of like the fall guy.
you're right. I mean, somebody had to go, right? It's that whole thing.
Yep.
So yeah, but I think they just got to see how he does. I mean, I'm cautiously awesome. I'm always cautiously optimistic about Minnesota sports teams, and
Right.
like that's always
Just
gonna be what I'm
protecting,
gonna pick.
just protecting your heart, right?
Right. So like, yeah, I guess that's where I would go to, and obviously that also the other answer of no one's gonna be able to do anything with $14 million of dead caps. There's that too. So I can see both
Yeah,
sides.
for sure. I definitely think we have to give him time. Just don't fire him next season. Let's let this dead caps thing settle. Get over this hump here of this next season, and then see what he can do. Give him a couple of years. If he doesn't pan out, then you just go find the next guy, and you go, what? If they don't pan out, well, we're probably looking for a new general manager too. So,
Right. Yeah.
but moving on and that was actually the number one put choice too, is cautiously optimistic at 36.6%. And then not while there's 14.7 million dead cap was the second choice at 34.3%. So a lot of people are on the same page there. I only very confident it was only at 3.7%. So
Yeah.
well, bless your hearts for whoever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, somebody, yeah, give him a beer or something, pat him on the back.
yeah, an ice cold Bush,
Yeah,
Brendan.
they deserve it. Yeah.
For us, so send it to them. 12th question: if the Wild trade Philip Gustafson, how confident are you in Jesper Wallstead, Marc-Andre Fleury, Chandum? If they stay healthy, I'm pretty confident, but I'll go for the top selections right now. 1, somewhat confident. 2, worried. 3, very confident. Or 4, that would be a disaster. So I would say I would probably be very confident. So I'm going to fit into that 13.2% there because I think that Jesper Wallstead is going to be that next big time goalie in the NHL. All signs kind of point to that. And just how he kind of carried himself this season when he did come up here. Obviously, in the first game, he got shelled, but he had no help defensively in that game one. And then he ended his last game with us with a shutout. So I think, Wallstead has all the tools. He's very young. And hey, he's got a heck of a guy to learn from too, to Marc-Andre Fleury.
Yeah.
Just one all-time goalie in the NHL. And yeah, I would like that tandem a lot going forward. Only thing I get worried about, like I said, is if one of them goes down, well, what happens? Who's going to be who's going to be the third goalie
Right.
if we do trade Augustin? I'd like to see that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd be very confident in that tandem.
I'm somewhat confident. But I think I'm more leaning towards very confident than worried, but so I guess
Mm,
somewhat confident. You know, I mean, I don't see Marc-Andre Fleury like falling off a cliff
yeah.
in terms of play. Um, so, and Wallstead had that terrible first game, but I honestly think our team was terrible.
Hmm.
So it's really hard for me to be like it was all his fault. And then he came
Yep.
back and he has some good games, And I think this is just where we're at. We just have to. This is the time Wallstead's gonna have to come in and start learning and you know, start getting those NHL games underneath him.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at. And
Yeah, for sure.
I also want to say I did have Marc-Andre Fleury as a honorable mention for top Wild players.
Yeah, definitely.
So
Or not to like the flower, just a
right.
super cool dude. So another thing too, just real quick before we move on to the next question, I forget about this. That will help in the defensive prospect pool too. Is that we signed that Jack Perkin out of St. Cloud State,
Oh
who's our
yeah,
draft.
you're right.
Oh, he's out of Grand Rapids. He's our second overall or second round pick in 2021. So the defensive pool's there. Now we just got to see one of these guys step up for us. So.
Yeah, somebody has to do it because it's getting crunch time with that defensive end. So
No doubt. All right, 13th question. What do you expect from Jesper Wallstead to become? So 1, solid goalie, number 1. Superstar goaltender, number 1 goalie, but not reaching expectations. A career backup, or 5, a bust. Well, I don't think he's going to be a bust. So
yeah,
I'm going to throw that one out. And only 0.1% of the people agree with that. So, rest on that one there, buddy. But, or it could have been a woman too. So you never know. If I was going to pick one of these selections, I'm probably going to say, oh man, I really want to do superstar goaltender because I really think he can reach that echelon.
right.
I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to put that on him. So I'm going to say a solid goalie, number 1,
Yeah,
is what I would have to say for this one.
me too. I mean, yeah, it'd be awesome to be like, yeah, he's going to be the greatest goalie of all time. But
Yep,
that's a stretch, obviously.
for sure.
If I was in Vegas and this was something I could put money on, I would say solid number 1 goalie. And maybe I'll sprinkle a couple extra bucks on Superstar on another ticket just in case something crazy happens. But I think you
Yeah.
can't go wrong with solid number 1.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And that's what 71.1% of the people said too. So we'll move into our 14th question. Which prospect not named Jesper Wallstead are you most excited about? Number 1, Daniil Yurov. Number 2, Riley Heidt. Number 3, Liam Ogren. Number 4, Marat Huznidovanov. Number 5, Hunter Haight. Number 6, Rasmus Kumpalainen. Number 7, Carson Lambos. Number 8, Damian Hunt. Number 9, Caden Banker. And number 10, Rieger Lorenz. So if I had to pick one, I already saw Huznidovanov here.
I thought it was Kuznetsov, but I don't know. I'm probably saying it
Maybe
wrong too. I don't fucking know. Sorry.
no, it's like one of those. Huznidina. It's a Russian name, so give
Right.
me grace here.
Yeah, stop.
Huznidina.
I don't want us to
What's that?
stop drafting Russian players because they've turned out pretty good so far, but like, God does it make it tough for
Yeah.
us to say their names.
Right. Yeah, I'm just gonna say Marat.
Yep.
Marat K.
Marat.
So
Yeah.
Marat K, we
Yeah.
obviously got to see him here this past season. I'm really excited to see what Yurov does. That's a very nice Russian name to say too, Yurov. That's really easy.
That's easy at least.
But I'm really excited to hear him say because he really fell in that draft. A lot of people thought he was going to go a lot higher than where he was selected. So, yeah, I'm really excited to see what he could do for us.
I'm gonna go Riley Height.
I like that one too.
Yeah, I think. I mean, those two options. I mean, how can you not? I mean, both guys we're super looking forward to.
Yep.
I mean, I feel like every time I was on Twitter during the hockey season, there was a highlight of Riley Height, like, oh, we got another goal. Oh, we got another goal. Oh, we got another goal. And
for sure.
that's awesome. So I'm curious to see how he's going to turn out, how it's going to go.
Yeah. With that name Riley too, he's going to be an absolute dog as well.
That's right.
So.
I mean, you can never go wrong with that. Solid name.
So that defenseman just came to mind. I think his name is David Spacek.
Oh, yeah.
Was a defenseman. So he was a guy that really killed in World Juniors, had a lot of high praise, and he kind of went back down in the gutter a little bit last season. So hopefully he can figure himself out.
You remember our who was that draft pick that you loved that we had a couple Olafson or not Olafson? What was his name? Remember who I'm talking about?
The guy couldn't do one thing right.
Yeah, the guy who didn't even play like any games for the Wild didn't even come over.
Gustafson?
What's that?
Philip Gustafson.
No.
Or no, Philip Johansson.
Yes. God, that was such a bad draft pick. Holy smokes.
My gosh. Yeah, Zeke, our buddy Zeke has a great video of me just being absolutely furious after that pick.
Yeah.
So
that was, I mean, yeah.
Guy I never heard of, didn't do one thing right, and he got drafted in the first round. So
right.
Great job there, buddy. But 15th question, 15th question. Do you still agree with the 2021 decision to buy out Zach Parise and Ryan Suter? 1, yes to both. 2, yes to Suter. 3, yes to Parise. 4, no to both. Yes to both was the top one at 67.2%. Yes to Suter was the second one at 15.2%. The third choice was to Parise at 11.8%. And then the last choice there was no to both at 5.8%. So little discrepancy there. Most people think yes, they should have stuck with it. I agree. I think it was just time to, especially after the fact that what you heard about Suter, he might not have been the best locker room guy later on in his career to some of the other guys. So, but man, I do miss his quick trip commercials. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, he sold me on the take home meals for sure.
Oh
Like
yeah. Oh yeah.
when he said that he fed his family with quick trip bring home meals,
Yep.
I was like, I'm gonna have to do the same thing.
Oh gosh, he should be trying to sell workout commercials after that one. So,
Right.
what do you think for this one? Do you think it was the right move?
Yeah. I don't know what else
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It was always gonna end badly.
Yep.
Obviously, a couple of cups in there or a cup would have made it a little bit easier to swallow what we're
Yeah.
going through right now. But I
Yep.
mean, I'll never. I remember when we traded for them. I was up at like my grandparents' cabin.
Mhm.
It was like on the 4th of July or around there, 4th of
I think
July.
it was. I think it was 4th of July because I was up at Island Lake.
Yeah, and it was just I was so pumped because before that didn't really. I mean, there was Koivu and maybe I think Clutterbuck maybe was still on the team, and then I mean, there
Yeah.
really wasn't a whole lot of fun, But and
Yeah.
they were like, they weren't, we didn't get Crosby and Kane, but we got pretty solid players, and they clearly made our team better. So
For
I'll
sure.
never regret us doing it, and I'll never regret us getting rid of them when we did.
Yeah.
It is what it is, and we just got to move on from this.
Yeah.
You know
Everything brings us to today. So,
exactly
it was a part in our history and that we needed to go through
right.
that.
And
So,
like I said earlier in the pod, made it to the playoffs almost every year with them on the team. So I mean, that's a lot to ask, and so
no doubt. No doubt. So, well, moving on to our 16th question. Bill Guerin is entering his 6th season as Wild GM. How would you rate his performance so far? 1, satisfied. 2, so-so. 3, excellent. 4, disappointed. Hmm. If I had the, well, not if I had to pick one, picking one, I think that I would have to say, overall, I would probably say satisfied. I like Billy G a lot. I do think the buyouts did put us in a crunch, but it's also something that just needed to happen. And we were kind of anticipating this to happen. And the fact that we had a pretty good year, not last year, but the year before that, we kind of shocked people, I think, a little bit. And I like Billy G. I think he's got that mentality of just no effing around, and all he wants to do is win. And I think it was not last season, but the year before, they showed like a pre-season, maybe in the training camp, where he asked Spurgeon a question. He's like, something about Spurgeon, like, what's the number one thing that we're here for? And Spurgeon said to have fun. And he said, F that, it's to win. So I like that mentality out of Billy G. I think that the buyout just would put anyone in a tough spot. And once we're done with that, I'm really excited to see what he could do because, like I said, they've drafted really, really well. And hopefully some of these guys start showing that as well. So,
yeah, I'm in that camp as well. I am satisfied. I mean, obviously I believe the Brock Faber thing was him, right? So I mean,
yeah,
obviously
yep,
that
he
turned
did
out
that trade,
super great so far. So
for sure.
I mean, the only little notch that is the big contracts to no trade clauses to like Hardman and Goudreau and Johansson.
Mhm.
I just that kind of stinks. But other than that, I mean, GMs aren't going to always be perfect. I think we have to remember that. But I mean,
For
obviously,
sure.
there's a difference between good ones and bad ones.
Yep.
I mean, Fenton was terrible, so at least he's not
Oh,
our
yeah.
GM
Well,
anymore.
they're the one who took that Philip kid there,
Yeah,
Johansson,
and we
out
got
of
the
Sweden.
one and only Victor Rask. So, but that's in the
Oh gosh.
past. Moving forward, we got Billy G. He wants to win, and yeah, let's get rid of this dead cap, and let's roll.
No doubt. Yeah, satisfied was the number one pick here at 54.8%. So was at 27.7%. Excellent 10.3 and disappointed at 7.1. So, well, 17th question. Are you confident that Billy G will be able to turn this franchise into a Stanley Cup contender after the buyout pain disappears. 1, somewhat confident. 2, unsure. 3, very confident. 4, doubtful. And 5, no way. I'm going to say somewhat confident. I think we can. I think he can because he has that experience as a player for sure. He's had that experience as a general manager with the Pittsburgh Penguins there. He did win a cup there when he was assistant GM, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think he does have the right plan. And the whole thing is just like the same thing we keep talking about, the damn buyout. Like that's the main thing that's been in the way for the most point.
Yeah.
Or the most part. So I'm pretty confident in Billy G though. I really like him.
Yeah. I mean, Kaprizov stays. Faber's sick. Kuzdudinov is a solid third line center. Rossi is a solid second line center. Boldy continues on what he's doing. Maybe even gets even a little better, more consistent.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think we have solid pieces. Wallstead becomes who everybody thinks he might become. Yep. I think we have a solid team. You know, I think, you know, and who knows Riley Height, who knows Urov, so there's definitely a lot of hope. There's definitely things we can, you know, get excited for. And if those players are really going to be who everybody says they're going to be, I think we're going to be a pretty good squad.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right, 18th question. Which of these areas concern you the most about the Wild over the next 2 seasons? 1, secondary scoring. 2, center depth. 3, size on defense. 4, Iowa's lack of success. 5, goaltending. 6, leadership. 7, coaching. What do you think for yourself? What did you pick?
So for the next 2 seasons, I think secondary scoring. Like I said, we have, I believe Johansson, Goudreau, Hartman are all on no trade move clauses, and they were not good last year. Johansson was completely terrible. So if they do not improve, I think it's going to be hard. The first line of Kaprizov, Boldy,
Zooks,
and Ek, which whatever it's going to be, that was the one at the end, I believe, is what they ended up with. But, you know, whoever, they really had to carry the team. And I don't know what we can do about that. I think that's, you know, I think that's where we're going to have to be. I think that's how we're going to have to be weak in that area with the buyout. And we let the new kids come in. We let them get ready for the NHL. And then hopefully that'll bring in our secondary depth from there.
Yeah, like you don't know. We don't know what these prospects are going to be. Maybe Urov is that secondary scoring guy to Kaprizov. You know, Boldy, you know, he definitely has the potential to be that. So I do really like that tandem when they did have Kaprizov and Zooks together on that line because their chemistry was just out there. You know, so maybe they can get back to that. We'll see. But yeah, I agree with you. Secondary scoring is the biggest thing. Because most of the time in the playoffs, Kaprizov, that first line gets shut down, and we just didn't have any other scoring. So that was our kind of big issue here. So, well, moving on to the 19th question. Would you be... Oh, this is a fun one. Would you be a proponent of renovations to XL Energy Center to add bells and whistles, clubs, restaurants, bars? Most other arenas have added. Yes or no?
Who says no? I want to know who the people are like, no. I don't like nice things.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like 26.4% of the people.
The same people that voted. What was the other absurd one? Let me look. Yeah, no, not that one. Yeah, bus. That Wallsted's gonna be a bus. They're probably the same people. Like, I don't like restaurants.
Right.
You know, obviously, I want the XL Energy Center to be the freaking Taj Mahal if it can be. You know,
yeah, exactly.
Make it the best arena in the league. Keep it the best of the. You know, have it. You know, it's 24 years old now, so you got to keep pushing it. And why not? I mean, why would that be a bad thing?
Yeah, exactly. I agree with that. Yeah, I agree. Like, why not? Hell yeah, let's do it. 73.6% of the people say yes. So
right.
I'm right
I
on
mean, I'm
board
not
with
really
that.
a clubs guy anymore. I'm a little too old for that, but I love the hell out of restaurants and
Yeah,
bars.
I
So
mean, same here, same here. You gotta go bust a move real quick and get back to watching the
right,
game, but
yeah, please mention.
I'm more there to watch the game. I might go
Right,
have a beer and stuff like that, get some food, but
yeah.
I'm not gonna go do the freaking worm in the middle of the club to watch a hockey
I
game. So
mean,
maybe the
I
club could get thrown
mean,
out a little bit, but
maybe a couple of
hey,
drinks of Tom Reed's and I'll do the worm at the club and that.
never know. Hey, maybe Tom Reed is the one who voted 26.4%. He got all his from his bar to vote on
That's
it.
yeah.
Like, oh, we need people to come to the Reeds here. So no,
You're
you go to Reeds before
you're
the
onto
game.
something
You go to,
there.
yeah, you go to the Reeds before the game. You go to the Reeds after
Yeah,
the game.
Zab
But
Boney
during the
Pizza said, "No hell and way, we're not doing that."
game, yeah, during the game, we're gonna go have this experience here at the Exxon Center. So,
Right.
well, moving on to the 20th question here. So, what must happen for you to consider the 2024-2025 season to be successful, knowing it's their final season of cap limitations? 1, make the playoffs. 2, win around. 3, deep run. 4, win the Stanley Cup.
Win the Stanley Cup, obviously. If they don't win the cup, I mean, what are we even doing here?
Yeah, I mean,
I'm kidding.
statistically speaking, like, obviously that's what they play for is to win
Right,
the cup.
right.
But with how it's set up with our cap limitations, I would say, just make the playoffs would be awesome
Yeah.
and go from there. I'm not anticipating this deep run in the playoffs.
No.
Maybe we can win around. That'd be great.
I think we could I think we can make the playoffs and win
Yep.
around if we get a really good matchup and
Hmm.
either Wallstead or Fleury stand on their head and our first line carries the mail like crazy. If that's not what
Yeah.
happens, then we just make the playoffs and that's it. And that's kind of what I'm thinking too.
Yeah, for sure. Make the playoffs would be cool. So, I mean, you never know what can happen, but
Right.
we'll see.
I love the
So,
comments on. Do you read the first comment on the top?
I did not know what's the comment.
So you might have to leave me
What?
out, but it's who said trade Brodeen. That's
Dude, we're all
awesome.
right there with him, man. All right
Who's
there with him.
the
So,
same guy who
and who
said I
said,
don't like
and who,
restaurants and bars? The same guy who
yeah,
said Wall says it's gonna be a
uh,
bust.
yep,
We're just
exactly.
creating mayhem
Gosh,
on here.
yeah. That person must have like a bad round of golf or something. I'm
Yeah.
so pissed off. I
Yep.
hit so many damn trees today, putting them in the wood.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go on this
I
survey and
mean,
vote
I'm not gonna
no. I
lie,
don't
that'll
like
piss
clubs,
anybody off.
restaurants, or bars. So, yeah.
All right.
What we got? What's that?
Oh, all right.
Yeah. So, well, moving on. So that's kind of to our ending point here of the podcast. So, yeah, this was a lot of fun, Brendan. Thank you for filling in tonight, joining me today. I had a really fun conversation with you. I hope all the listeners listen to it as well. And before we get off, I just want to say one thing. You know, Brendan's family is like a second family to mine, and one of the greatest people I ever met. Had a pleasure of watching a lot of football drafts in the garage and a lot of games for the Wild and for the Vikings in the garage too. And whenever I'd go over this to the garage, I always leave feeling a lot happier, no matter the outcome of that sport or outcome of that game, because I had the pleasure of interacting with Brendan's grandpa, Grandpa Andy. So, Brendan, I know we all miss Grandpa Andy, and Grandpa Andy, I know you're listening to us right now,
Oh yeah.
and this one's for you.
Yep,
So,
exactly. I mean, I don't know anybody that loved the draft more than you and my grandpa Andy. I mean,
mhm.
he had football magazines, he was circling guys, he was writing notes. I mean, he was just like,
Yep.
you guys in the draft, or it's your guys' thing, and that's awesome. And I mean, yeah, I mean, watching sports with him and all my friends were, his friends, and yeah, cool your jets.
Cool your Jets.
Exactly.
That's yep, for sure. So, well, I think to end it tonight, we'll end with that here, and yeah, just keep looking for our next podcast. Um, here in the summer, probably be taking them off a little bit. So doing maybe bi-weekly, every couple weeks we'll have them come out. Thinking about potentially taking some time off in July before the football season, because that'll be a big haul here coming up. But yeah, Brendan, we'll definitely have you on again here in the summertime, and have you on in the special guest in the future. So this is not going to be a one and done. But
Yeah, I'm looking
for
forward
Grant,
to it.
yeah, for sure.
When we first turned on the camera, I was a little, nervous, but I think, as it just felt like it was just you and I talking, just BSing about
Yeah,
sports like we always do, and that's the fun thing about
yep,
it.
no
Hopefully,
doubt.
people
Yeah,
enjoyed our takes and our stupid things that we say and had fun with it. So,
no doubt for sure. Well, for Grandpa Andy, see you next time. Cool your jets.
cool your jets.
Thank you for listening to our episode. Be sure to give us a follow on Instagram and X at Naptime Sports Talk Podcast for content related to the pod. Thank you for the support.